All right, we on. Put the headphones on first this time. It's just about impossible to get headphones on without making your hair look ridiculous. And I do it minimum 3 times every time. And I got a haircut today, so that made it even worse. So I put the headphones on first, and then you hit record. Killing it. Yeah, got a haircut today. Despite the Rona, I risked it for the biscuit. It's like, got to get this fresh wig. But I went to a Turkish barbershop. It's just down the road from my place. And Turkish people know how to do barbershops. Like, I don't know. They're super quick. Like, you walk in and it's just like, sit down, and then like they were speaking German to me and I couldn't understand. I'm just like, show them a picture and they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, short on the sides and whatever. And they're like, number 2, 3, 0, 0, you 0? No, I'm like, no, I don't know, 3, whatever. And as soon as I said it, it's like, yep, okay. Get the clippers out, like so quick, like, pushing my head, like, scissors, get the brush, bitteschön. It's like so efficient, but God, I love it. But yeah, when you're like, especially now with all the corona stuff, it's like the least amount of physical contact I have with somebody, the better. And they were doing good. Like I think they're under like restrictions where they have to wash your hair, and they're wearing gloves and they're wearing a mask. You got to wear a mask and everything. So yeah, but it was good to get in and out of there really quick. They're so good at it. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm realizing I said that I was going to make this a conspiracy episode, and I am, but I'm going to talk about conspiracies. The thing is that I've realized is that if I'm going to do this every week, I need to make it as simple as possible for myself. So yes, I'm talking about conspiracies, but I didn't do any like preparation or something. But it's not supposed to be a prepared thing with a script or anything. It's just off the cuff. So yeah, basically I want to just make it more like, I write notes during the week of what I want to talk about, and then I think about what it is when I start. So that's what it's going to be. But yeah, I thought it was a good time to start talking about conspiracy theories, because so many things like big world events have happened this year. So many new conspiracy theories. Like, I'm like, at this stage of my life, I don't know if I'm that much of a conspiracy guy, but I've definitely delved into conspiracies a lot in the past. I'm all around like, well, obviously there's a lot of conspiracies that are like super crazy and super deep, like beyond something that I've looked into. But I know all the basic ones. Like I watched Zeitgeist when I was like 16 or something. Like I know all the stuff about 9/11, and I've gone through phases of like, when I first watched Zeitgeist, for example, in the beginning they talk a lot about like religion, and then there's a whole part about the war on terrorism and 9/11 and that kind of stuff, and then at the end it's all about like the Rothschilds and all the where the money goes and everything. And I got to admit, for a while, like I was pretty much 100% convinced, like, with this Bush did 9/11 thing, and still, like, I should say now, because I need to make some kind of declaration that I know I've got no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. But kind of my point of this whole thing is that I think most people don't know what they're talking about, as in everyone, because it's impossible to know. But basically, yeah, I went through this stage of, Bush did 9/11, all this kind of stuff. Maybe I should move this a bit up so I don't laugh into it so much. But yeah, so like I've gone through phases, and there was a time where any sort of conspiracy I delved into, I sort of went deep into it and had a tendency to believe most of the stuff that I was seeing about conspiracy theories, because, and I think this happens for most people, is like you hear something is one way for such a long time, you know, from the media and stuff. And then once you hear this opposing opinion from, you know, some documentary about conspiracies or some YouTube video or something, and it seems like it's presented in such a compelling way, you're like, oh, wow, like I've been lied to this whole time. Like, I can't believe they've just uncovered all this information that I didn't know about. But there's no reason why that information is more credible than the information you had before. Like, just because it's new and novel. Like, that could be just as manufactured as, you know, what it's claiming the existing information is already manufactured. Could be just the same. It's just kind of like the way the information is presented to you, and, you know, where you're at, like, you know, how you're feeling about news and all this kind of stuff. It's like you are kind of in a susceptible state to believe something new. And also, if there's things that frustrate you, like, you're more likely to believe something that, you know, like this, or if you're scared of something, like if this whole thing about terrorists and 9/11 and everything, you know, sometimes it might be easier to believe that, like, it wasn't possible for, like, you know, terrorists to capture, like, steal 2 planes and fly them into a building, because then we would be scared that that would happen to us all the time. So you find some other explanation that there was much more involved, and it was all, you know, cleverly orchestrated by governments and stuff. Then it kind of, in a way, that can kind of make you feel better. And there's some reason for you to, like, cling on to that information. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into that, but I've just been thinking about it a lot lately because of all these things that are happening recently, especially like coronavirus and stuff. And I'm noticing a lot that, people have this willingness to kind of cling on to some new idea that they hear that goes against, you know, what everyone else is saying. And sometimes it's just like you want to be different, so you want to believe something that's not the same thing that everyone else believes. So if it's like an alternative opinion, you'll be more likely to believe that. And yeah, but sometimes it's something like that. You know, you hear that there's that there's a disease which could spread around the world and you know, cause a lot of damage and kill a bunch of people, and these things could happen naturally without any human control over it. That's like a terrifying thing. And to think that, like, you know, coronavirus isn't anywhere near as bad as it could be. Like, we could have a much worse virus than this. I think that, yeah, that's kind of terrifying. So in a way, like, people maybe want to cling on to this idea that it was something man-made or something that was done on purpose, because then kind of, even though that is terrifying in itself, like the fact that, you know, there could be some underlying war between countries that's gone to, you know, a new level, like, you know, like viral, this, what do you call it? Like, warfare to do with, you know, making people ill. Jesus, I can't think of any words today. I washed some bolts in some hot vinegar before, and I think I might have inhaled some zinc. Yeah, so I don't even know what I was talking about. Jesus, I might have cooked it. Yeah, so it's kind of terrifying that some countries might have orchestrated this sort of thing, but it seems like, oh yeah, that's the more terrifying things. So, like, people need to be, like, it gives you this idea that if you believe this conspiracy that it was orchestrated by China or something, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm saying, like, at the moment it's kind of a conspiracy, then it's kind of like, oh, you know, you have to be strong in your head to realize like the truth, that it's actually like something, you know, man-made or something. But I think that's actually maybe the easier solution to grab onto, because it's not as terrifying as something that's completely out of human control. And I don't know which way it is, to be honest. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that was planned and organized by people, but I've got no idea. But yeah, I think people, especially when you're kind of worried about something or when you're thinking about something a lot, you have this tendency to cling on to an idea, especially if you're really not confused, but if you're really thinking about something a lot, the more you delve into something, the more you realize that, you know, this information might be wrong, this information might be biased, because you know, everyone has kind of a reason why they're presenting certain information. So it's very hard to tell what information you can trust. And you get to this point where, like, you're so stressed out about not knowing what you can believe that you really want to just cling on to something that explains what's happening. But yeah, I think that's something you really need to avoid, because yeah, it's not clever to cling on to something just because. I'm making this explanation too long. Yeah, so I think, you know, if you know about like cognitive biases, one of the cognitive biases is confirmation bias. So when people kind of have an inkling of something, then, you know, you already feel that, you know, speaking of corona, say we're talking about whether corona is naturally spawned, or was it created by humans? If you kind of already think that it was created by humans, then any information you see, which even information which presents both arguments, if you already think one way, then you're more likely to retain that information and kind of ignore all the rest. So it strengthens that opinion. So I think in these times, like, it's really important to be metacritical, like to really recognize, like, am I thinking about this in a biased way just because this is the way I want it to be? But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people who are against like the quarantine and stuff, I'm noticing generally it's somebody who has some reason why, or some reason why it's negatively affecting them to be quarantined. I mean, it negatively affects everyone, but you know, you might see it in like musicians or actually musicians are doing okay here, but people who are making money from things that can't happen in quarantine. Like, yeah, people that are losing their jobs, basically. I would say they're more inclined to say that, you know, we don't need to be quarantining, or like it's not as bad as people are making it out to be, or something. A lot of people are bringing up that that like the flu is more dangerous than coronavirus, and that's something where it's like you've seen so much information, like so much data about how many people are dying from coronavirus, and it's plastered everywhere. Like everything is pointing towards like coronavirus is really bad. And then as soon as somebody sees, like just hears somebody say, oh, but actually like the flu is much more dangerous, they'll cling on to that information, and then they start spreading it around. It's like, oh no, but actually, like, did you know that the flu is more dangerous? Like the flu kills more people than this each year. And usually they do that without like verifying that information. And it's not true, obviously. Yeah, like coronavirus is definitely, whether it's man-made or not, it's definitely a lot worse than the flu, and it spreads a lot faster, and it's much harder to detect and stuff because it's got a longer incubation period and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so you got to recognize, like, I've seen a bunch of information that says this isn't true, and then just because one person said something with no evidence behind it, I can't take that as gospel just because that is something that I'm more comfortable with. Like the idea that it's just like a flu, like, oh yeah, I've had a flu, it's fine. Like you're more comfortable with that, so you're more likely to grab onto that. But just realize like there's actually no reason that you should believe that. But yeah, so conspiracies like this coronavirus thing, you know, people are saying that it's all orchestrated by China, which could be. Like, I think there's a lot of evidence to say that that did happen, but I've got no idea. A lot of people are saying that it's caused by the 5G telephone towers. And this one I find much harder to believe. I can't, you know, say either way. But that one shocked me in the beginning. Like, I saw when 5G first became a thing, before Corona was a thing, and people were posting all this stuff saying, like, look into it, like, you know, the frequencies that they use, and it's bad for your health, like it could give you cancer and all this stuff. There's not been any tests, as far as I could find when I did a little bit of research into it, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that 5G does cause cancer or anything. But yeah, the idea that it's creating a virus, like, I don't even know who could possibly determine that. Like, you've got to be both an epidemiologist and like a radiologist, or like a, you know, somebody who knows a lot about like high frequency signals and that kind of thing. But I think that's very unlikely that, yeah, like there's, you know, we're exposed to different, like so many different frequencies of, you know, radio waves and all this stuff from like so many different kinds of machines. And I'm not just talking about everyday people, but like in all the history of, you know, different kinds of machines and things that people have worked with, I don't think there's ever been any recorded case of like some frequency being able to create a virus. Maybe that's like, maybe there's some total other explanation of how this conspiracy is meant to work, but I've got no, yeah, I got no idea. Maybe someone will comment and tell me, they'll make me a bit more woke on the topic. But yeah, the next one I wanted to mention is anti-vax, because anti-vax is something that is going to get red hot when inevitably somebody makes a vaccine for coronavirus. I already know some people who are anti-vaxxers, and you know, like the whole gist of anti-vax, as far as I know, is that like people think getting vaccines, there's some people I think who think having a vaccine is more likely to make you get like autism or something. And, you know, believe that if you want to, but like the majority, like almost every person gets vaccinated. Like I think it's a pretty high percentage. I've got no idea, but I assume it's more than 90%. Definitely not 90% of people have autism. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. But there's also like, I guess people are starting to say now all this stuff is happening with Bill Gates, and people think that Bill Gates is trying to insert like microchips into people. I need to stop laughing into this. Yeah, so microchips. And I've actually had somebody in Melbourne say this to me before. Usually, I don't want to discriminate against people, but the two anti-vaxxers that first come to my mind, people that I've met in Melbourne that were anti-vaxxers, both of them were the kind of people that, you know, carry around crystals and ask you what your star sign is and that kind of thing. I don't want to, you know, paint everyone with the same brush, but it's like, yeah, I've had somebody tell me that vaccines are like, the government is putting these nanobots into your bloodstream. And I mean, like, if you work in the technology industry or you've got any like idea of the history of technological developments and stuff, like, yeah, a lot of technology comes from the military and, you know, like the space race and all that kind of stuff. But generally, technology is very quick to go from like a military use or a research, you know, somebody's researched and developed something brand new that no one's ever seen before, it's usually pretty quick to become commercialized. And if somebody was able to create some kind of nanobot that was able to control a person, and just all you have to do is inject it into your bloodstream, that technology would be everywhere. Like, I find it very hard to believe that some government body could control the awareness of this thing existing. Like, yeah. You know, like if a team of people are working on something like that is that impressive, like they're all going to be so excited about it. There's no way you could have a sustainable team which is consistently developing something like this. Like, what are they, like prisoners in some underground warehouse or something that never have any contact with the outside world or something, yet they're still motivated enough to work on something like this? Like, yeah, I find it very hard to believe that you could have technology like that existing for any amount of time without it immediately going into the commercial space. But yeah, I'm no scientist. I'm just a basic product engineer. But yeah, so I think anti-vax is going to blow up when a vaccine finally comes out. I think a lot of people are going to start saying that, you know, the whole reason why coronavirus was like invented by humans, if that's the conspiracy you want to go with, is that you know, they're trying to force every single person in the world to get this vaccine, and then this vaccine will have some electrical device inside it which can then control your body, or like not control your body, but maybe just like track all your movements and that kind of stuff. And yeah, like, firstly, I don't think everyone's going to get the vaccine anyway, especially not all over the world. Like, there'll be some countries that just don't do it at all, I think. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And if I'm wrong, then I guess Bill Gates will be knowing my exact whereabouts for the rest of my life. But that is something that I really don't care about. This is another thing. Like, a few years ago, I think this was around like 2017, 2018, everybody started going off Facebook. Like, there was this whole thing about how Facebook privacy was changing, and there was that whole thing where the internet changed, and now every website you go on has to ask you for permission for your cookies and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people freaked out and said, like, I'm not doing Facebook anymore. And when I talk to people about it, like, you know, it's your own decision, whatever you want to do. I think, like, it's a good idea to get off Facebook and Instagram for your own sake, because although I don't do it, but to kind of do like what people call a dopamine detox, like to try and limit like your amount of time spent on these instant gratification loops of just scrolling through things and being entertained, and that kind of kills your productivity and your motivation and stuff. So in that sense, yeah, if you want to get off Facebook and Instagram, go for it. But like this whole idea that, like, oh, you know, they've got all your information and they track you with all these cookies and everything, it's like, whatever. You know, like, what do you want to do? I'm not, you know, the only reason I can see why it matters if people, like, if somebody's tracking where you are or something, is if you're a criminal. Like, you know, you want your privacy so no one knows where you are. Why? Like, no one's going to do something like, no one's going to use that information for something that, you know, the only downside is that you can't commit a crime with the privacy of people not knowing where you are. And like, you know, if it's on your phone and you're going to do a fucking burglary or something, leave your phone at home. That's the hot tip for you. If you're going to do crimes, don't bring Facebook, because they'll know. But yeah, I don't know. I don't give a shit if people track me, to be honest. Like, and you know, people say like, oh, they're listening to you. Like, they know, they're listening to your conversations and stuff, and they know what ads to send you. Like, I was talking about dog toys the other day, and then all of a sudden I saw on my Instagram feed the ad for dog toys And it's like, you know, people are terrified by it. I'm like, well, it's kind of convenient, right? Like, you were talking about dog toys, and maybe you did want to buy dog toys. Like, that's better than getting an ad for like something completely unrelated to you. Like, at least it's kind of useful. Now I'm probably sounding like a fucking shill. like I'm secretly being paid by Bill Gates to convince everyone to take this coronavirus vaccine. I'm getting paid to convince everyone to like use Facebook and stuff. No, to be honest, I think just like there's a whole lot of hysteria about something that really, like, what it comes down to is this. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out things to do with conspiracies, like, did Bush do 9/11? Because that's something I really want to know. Like, is it possible for a country's government to orchestrate an attack on itself to strengthen its own, I guess, patriotism, and strengthen their own, you know, place, like their power in government? Because that's scary if that is something that can be done. The problem is, no matter how much you look into it, like, no matter how clever you are, no matter how many resources you go through, and no matter how much time you spend watching YouTube videos and stuff, the chances that you'll ever actually know the answer is fuck all. Like, you probably will never know. And even if you did know, like, even if you, for some reason, like, even if you managed to somehow lock George Bush in a bricked off room underground in the middle of nowhere, no one knew he was there, and you had a pair of like pliers or something, and you could grab each one of his fingers and torture him until he told you everything that happened with 9/11. Even if you knew everything, like, what can you do? Like, you know, that's already in the past. That's something that can't be changed now. And, you know, that's somebody who doesn't have any power over anyone anymore. Even if you knew all the answers, like, most people don't have enough significance to actually, like, you know, tell anyone to change people's minds about anything. You can't prove anything. Like, so if you were even able to get all the answers, it's kind of for nothing. Like, at the end of the day, you really just can't control this shit that's going on, and there's new shit that's happening everywhere. And it's a lot more effort to try to constantly try to understand everything and to try to have some ability to, like, control how things will go in the future. But it's just like, you know, it's a sad thing to say, but you're not going to fucking change anything. So I think, you know, people will be a lot happier if you just ignore it, you know? Like, maybe that's a sad thing to say, but, like, ignore all this stuff because it's not important to your life. Like, you concentrate on what you want to achieve with your life. Do all the stuff that you want to get done before you die. Do all of that stuff and be happy and be nice to other people. And, you know, you do the right thing. If you have your own values of how you think, like, a government should be acting or something, you just live by those values. And if you know, have a long life and achieve a lot of things living by those values, then I think you'll have a happy life. If you're constantly worried about people controlling you and tracking you and doing these horrible things to people, but you never actually have any control over them doing it, you're just going to be constantly annoyed, constantly pissed off, and constantly, you know, in a rage. Because a lot of conspiracy theorists are in a rage all the time. It's like, it's an outrage, but yeah. But that said, there are some things I think that, you know, it's worth talking about, and there are some things where we can have some kind of positive effect on things. But I think just, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff where you can just waste so much time thinking about it, and it's just not worth it. But I still do it. I still waste a lot of time thinking about it, but you know, not so much anymore. And sometimes I just try and have fun with it. Like, it is fun to delve into conspiracy theories. And one really fun thing for me to do is delving into the flat earth thing. Not that I don't believe in flat earth at all, but talking to flat earthers is so much fun. And yeah, I have to be metacritical, and I have to say, all right, there's a potential that maybe the world is flat and that everything I think is wrong. I acknowledge that, but I think it's very, very, very unlikely. I found this Facebook page. I won't say the name of it actually, but it was a very heavily religious group, I guess you would say. Yeah, it was a private group, and the point of this group was mostly about flat Earth, but it was talking about it in like a very religious kind of way, like this globe which surrounds, like a snow globe which surrounds the flat Earth, is kind of like the heavens, and it's like this film where like when you get to that dome, like that's where the heaven is or something. And it was really funny. They had like a questionnaire to answer, like to get into the group, and I wanted to try and find it because it was like 3 questions that were very much like very directed questions to try and get you to say, like, you know, to prove that you're a flat earther basically. And I just went completely against it. Like, you know, there was a question that was like, give me, like, list 5 proofs of a flat earth. And I just wrote, like, I've never come across a single one. And then it was something like, name one thing that NASA's ever done for the world. Like, yeah, flat earthers are obsessed with NASA. And I listed like a bunch of things. Like I wrote, oh, you know, they mapped the entire world using GPS. They sent, you know, people to the moon. All this kind of stuff. So I just totally went against all the questions. And for whatever miracle, like maybe they just don't even look at the answers, but they accepted me into the group. Maybe they accepted me because they wanted to like trying to convert me or something. But yeah, I spent about 2 weeks in this group, just like on and off, going in there and checking what people were posting and commenting on stuff. And I had a lot of fun. It was, you know, I never insulted anyone. I never directly attacked anyone. All I ever did was go into the comments and just question people. Just say like, if what you're saying is true, then how do you explain this? And a lot of the time people will ask you like, oh, they'll say to you like, oh, you just need to look into it. Like, you know, you've been indoctrinated by the system and like, you need to look into the facts. And most of the time that just means like, watch this 1 hour long YouTube video or something. And it's like, if you actually do the maths on this, like it doesn't add up. Like it doesn't work with the globe Earth. That's how you can prove that the Earth is flat. And it's like, you know, I don't know the answers to everything. Like, I don't know whether the Earth is, I don't know whether Bush did 9/11. But one thing I can do is maths. Not extremely well, but I've got an engineering degree and, you know, it's pretty maths heavy. So a lot of the time people ask you to do something, like they'll say, oh, if you actually work it out, like you'll see. And I'm like, all right, I'll work it out. Like, I'm not afraid of trying to work it out. And I've even gone as far as like making like there was this thing where it was like a lookout on a mountain. They were like, yeah, if you look like from this picture, you should be able to see the top of this mountain, blah, blah, blah. Or you shouldn't be able to see the top of this mountain if the Earth is round, but you can see it, like you can see to the base and stuff. And I actually made like a CAD model, and CAD doesn't lie. Like, you have fixed dimensions in CAD. Like, you can't make a fake drawing in CAD. And, you know, put in the dimensions, made it on like a round Earth that's obviously like huge diameter. And I wrote like a dot point like explanation of exactly how it works on a round Earth, and showed all the dimensions and stuff. I'm like, you can see here that you should be able to see exactly this much of the mountain, which makes total sense when you look at the picture. You can see that much of the mountain. And you know, they're always like, yeah, but if it's round, like it drops off this many inches by this many feet, because it's always Americans. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. Like, look, I've put it on a diagram. Like, you can see exactly how much it drops. I'm not denying that that's how much it drops per feet or whatever, but this is how it works. You can still see, if you're standing up on this mountain, you can still have a clear line of sight to the bottom of that mountain. Like, it works perfectly. And, yeah, so basically I spent like a week, anytime they asked me like, actually figure this out, I'd be like, all right, I'll figure it out. And then I show it to them. And then it's always just responses like, oh, this is like, how could you actually think that that's like real, like, this fake bullshit drawings that you're making and stuff, like, or whatever. I'm not going to be able to convince you what fucking CAD program is, but yeah, I would always ask them questions, say like, all right, well, you explain to me how this works then. Like, there'd be things about gravity where people say like, there's no such thing as gravity. It's like it's usually explained with buoyancy. And yeah, I would always try to say like, all right, well, this is like the formula for buoyancy, which is dependent on gravity. Like, gravity is part of the formula of buoyancy. So if gravity doesn't exist, then explain it. I know I've gotten heavy into like maths and physics and stuff, but yeah, like I always had that explanation. I'm like, all right, well, explain this to me then. Like, I'm talking to them. And, it usually just turns into me being bombarded with insults from a bunch of other flat earthers. But yeah, I haven't been converted. You'll be pleased to know. What other conspiracies? Oh, yeah. So the other thing this year was the bushfires in Australia. And that, like, obviously a lot of people were talking about climate change, and people saying like, climate change is contributing to this, and everyone's like, climate change? How could it be climate change? Like, all the math says that if climate change exists, it's only increased the temperature by 1.5 degrees or something. Like, that's not enough to light something on fire. And it's like, yeah, but you've got to look further into it than that. It's like it's creating droughts. It's reducing the amount of moisture in soil, and if you have a lot of dry fuel, then like it's much more dangerous, because then everything can light on fire. It's about the presence of water. It's not about the actual temperature of the air. But then there's this other conspiracy came up that the fires were purposely started to create a path for a high-speed rail between Melbourne and Sydney. So yeah, maybe some people in Australia haven't heard of this conspiracy either, but it's probably interesting for people overseas, is that, yeah, people thought that the fire was intentionally made to clear a path from Melbourne to Sydney to create a high-speed rail. So, maybe there's some evidence for that. I think that trying to control, like, we know how devastating bushfires are in Australia, and every year that gets worse and worse, and we've got so little control over where it goes, and people lose houses every year. And if we had any control over bushfires, then no one would be losing houses, and we wouldn't be losing thousands of hectares of land every year. And to say that you could purposely light a fire and control it to just burn this one area, or even just to consistently get the whole way through that area, like the amount that wind and everything changes fire, like there's no way you could purposely clear a path from Sydney to Melbourne. Like, that's a very long distance. There's no way you could reliably do that with a planned bushfire, I think, anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, that was a good one. Saw a lot of crazy Facebook posts about that one. And yeah, a lot of crazy Facebook stuff about climate change too, like, because it brought up this whole thing about climate change, and people started saying things like, like the actual rise in temperature isn't actually from climate change. It's from like, what's it called? There's a Russian scientist who thinks that it's something to do with like the cycles of the sun. Like, the sun goes through these cycles of having more or less radiation, like emitting more or less radiation over time. And people say that that's the reason why the Earth is heating up. But actually, like, if you look at it, really, it should be decreasing right now, because I need to look at it again. But yeah, I don't think that's a very good explanation. But I will say that even like the climate scientists who are researching into this, whatever, I forget what it's called, these radiation cycles, they are still paying attention to that, because they want to know more about how that's affecting the climate and stuff. So you can't rule it out completely, but pretty sure that's not the case. I feel like I didn't really cover any good conspiracy theories properly. I need to find another flat earth group to join. Maybe that's what I'll do, and I'll make a video about it. The thing is, I don't want to personally attack people, and I don't want to call people out. Like, I would have to blur everyone's names and stuff. Because if somebody called me out on, like, when I first started uni, I showed a bunch of people Zeitgeist. And if somebody called me out at that point and was like, you don't know fucking anything about 9/11 or anything, like, yeah, I would have been pissed off, but they would have been right. Like, I didn't know anything. And this is something that flat earthers say, that, like, that I was indoctrinated by going through university. But, I do think after I finished university, I was much less inclined to believe any conspiracy theories. And, to say I've been indoctrinated is to suggest that I've had some kind of subliminal messaging to me through a university to teach me that, like, Bush didn't do 9/11 or something like that. That's not the case. It's just like, the more you study, the more you realize, like, the more you're practicing a more in-depth way of, taking in data and analyzing data and making summaries from it, because you're constantly writing reports and writing things like this. It's not an indoctrination. It's literally just teaching you how to think about things better and how to actually deal, like, how to manage information better. Because, I think most of the reason why people will believe in a conspiracy theory is because it's a problem of, like, believing the wrong information, or not being able to correctly analyze the right information, and weed out what's right and wrong. But yeah, so I do still really like looking into conspiracy theories, but I worry now, especially that it's, there's a global health scare, and that conspiracy theories are actually, like, having an effect on whether people die or don't die. Just seeing all the people out on the streets and, like, playing volleyball and shit in the park, it's like, they obviously think, they might not be conspiracy theories, but theorists, but they obviously think that, the information that they've being given about coronavirus is not true. And that's scary, because it's legitimately dangerous. Like, if more people do that and ignore the correct information that they're getting, and I can't say 100% if it's correct, but I assume as far as I can see it is. If you're ignoring that information just because it's easier to cling to some other information, the cost of that is that people die. So, yeah, that is scary. Like, the conspiracy theorists, the spread of misinformation right now is so strong that it is actually causing people in the world to die in big numbers right now. So, yeah, I mean, it's not all conspiracy theorists to blame. There is a fucking deadly virus that's spreading around, but I don't think it's helped out by the fact that a lot of people aren't taking it seriously. In saying this, though, I also need to be metacritical, because something I've realized is that I personally don't know anyone who's been affected by coronavirus. So I have to acknowledge that yes, as far as I can see, I believe that, you know, there is a dangerous virus out there that we all need to be doing our thing to avoid. At the same time, I don't have any evidence of it, so I can't prove it. So I do have to keep that possibility in my head that maybe, you know, it's not maybe it is just like the common flu or something, but whatever. I think it's better to be safe than sorry. Anyway, I'm over that. I thought it was going to be more fun talking about conspiracies, but it wasn't. I'm gonna start what is it called? God, I think I inhaled something bad before. I want to start a segment. God, why did it take me so long? A segment. And this is basically no different to any of the rest of the stuff I talk about, but the segment is called Things That Shouldn't Annoy Me, But They Do. And they really do. But that's pretty much everything I talk about. But I wrote down this week that I wanted to talk about bike riding etiquette. Maybe this is something pretty stupid, but that's the whole point of this segment, is that it's something that a lot of people don't even consider or care about, but it's something that I start thinking about in my head and go, this really fucking pisses me off. So yeah, bike riding etiquette. I'm a cyclist, like not a lycra wearing coffee on Sundays cyclist, but I ride my bike to work. And I was doing that in Melbourne, and I still do it in Berlin. And for me, it's just like it's not a special thing I'm trying to do for exercise or whatever. It's just a quick way to get to work and a bit of exercise in the morning and the afternoon. But yeah, so I feel like I do it regular enough that I'm kind of like a cyclist, you know. I'm not like, you know, a noob. I do ride my bike a lot. And I feel like there's kind of an unspoken etiquette that some people understand and some people really don't understand. One thing that really bugs me is people going through red lights. And I get it, like sometimes if the light's red and there's no cars, you're like, I can just go through. I'm not just going to stand here looking around like I can see there's nothing going on. But I think that people should do that. And I personally do that. And the reason why is because there's already so much hatred for cyclists from people who drive cars. And I'm somebody who is a cyclist and I drive a car. So I both get annoyed as a driver, but I also get annoyed as a cyclist when I see another cyclist do something that I would find annoying as a driver. And going through red lights is one of them, because it's like people always look at cyclists and go, oh, yeah, it's fine for you to break the law, is it? You can just go through the red light. And yeah, if you're in a car and you look around and there's no one there, you're not just going to go through a red light because it's illegal and it's dangerous. And, you know, but for some reason on a bike, people think that it's okay. And yeah, you can see a lot better on a bike and you can hear a lot better and stuff. But I personally think that that's not okay, because you're making the rest of us cyclists look like assholes because you're an asshole. So basically the point is, don't do shitty things that are going to make drivers pissed off, because that makes all the drivers pissed off at me because they think I'm like that. But I'm not like that. So yeah, I think we should start a new movement called Stop at Red Lights. No, what do we call it? It's red, you fuckhead. That'll be the movement. It's red, fuckhead. Yeah, so going through stop signs, I think it's like I think people who are going through stop signs all the time think that like, I'm fucking riding my bike all the time. I know what I'm doing. Like, it's kind of this Dunning-Kruger effect thing. I talked about confirmation biases. This is like another cognitive bias. Dunning-Kruger effect is like when you get to a level of understanding of something where you think that you know everything, but it's actually like you've got just enough confidence to think that you know all there is to know about this topic. And it's just before you realize that there's way more you need to know. Or like just before you realize like, oh, actually there's other stuff that I didn't consider. And I think that that's the thing with bike riders who go through red lights is they think, yeah, like I'm riding my bike all the time. Like I know what it's like riding a bike. I know I can just go through the red light and stuff. But I think the people who riding their bike more than that realize like this guy's going to go through the red light, but as soon as the light goes green, I'm going to start riding and I'm going to catch up to him anyway. And by the time we get to the next light, when there's actually cars going past and he can't go through it, like we're going to be at the same spot. Like you're not going to get somewhere faster by going through this red light. At the end of the day, like I know that doesn't actually get you there faster because yeah, it just doesn't. I think that's something you get to know from having a bit more experience, realizing that it's not worth doing that because, you know, I've seen some pretty close to being serious accidents just because someone tries to sneak through a red light. But yeah, I think that part of it is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like they think that they know everything, and then it's like, it's actually like, why did you even do that? Because we're at the traffic lights again, and you know we're both back at the same place. And that's the other thing that annoys me is when somebody. Okay, so this is like another rule that I would make for, not a rule, but this is I think like the unspoken rule that you should have riding a bike is that if you pull up at a light, if you're pulling up at a light and there's someone in front of you and you haven't been riding behind them yet, you shouldn't go to overtake them. I think you have to have been sitting behind somebody already to know how fast they go. And then if you get to a traffic light, then you can make the decision that, okay, I'm going to go next to them so that when the light goes green, I'm going to go past them. Because every day, somebody, like I'm riding along and I'm stopped at the light and then somebody comes up from ages away that hasn't been riding behind me. And then they just assume I'm going to go around this guy. So they sit right next to you at the lights. And then as soon as you go, like I'm in front of them again because I was faster than this particular person. So, and like when I try and do the right thing, like somebody's stopped at the lights and I pull up behind them, I'm like, I'm going to sit behind them because I don't know how fast this person's going to go. And then some other person will come around all of us and sit at the front because they think they're going to be the fastest. And then as soon as the light goes green, then this whole group of people then have to go around this guy who thought he was the fast one. And we're all like, oh, thanks. Now we all got to go around you because you fucking went to the front for no reason. So basically, don't be arrogant. If you don't know how fast the person is in front of you, don't go around them. Yeah, God, a lot of complaining this week from me, isn't it? I've got another thing. Number 2 of things that shouldn't annoy me, but they do. People that don't read questions properly when you write on a forum or like a Facebook page or something. This happens to me all the time. I was trying to get my housemate to empathize with me on this one, but she didn't see my reasoning. Maybe somebody else will. But basically, yeah, like you ask something in a forum. There was a guy, this is an example, there was a guy in this forum talking about, he posted a thing, he's like, oh, this is for all the, it was in a Aussies in Berlin page, and he's like, here's all the translated transcript of Angela Merkel's recent speech. It was about coronavirus. And he posted it as like, oh, this is for all the, non-English, non-German speakers like me. Like he said, like himself. Like he'd found a translation of it. And he's like, here, everyone. And I read through it. And there was a part that said like, oh, you can find like, we're always giving updates on coronavirus in every different language. And I wrote a comment saying like, hey, like, thanks for the post. Does anyone know where I can find this like link where they're constantly updating people in all the different languages. Oh no, I think I phrased it like, does anyone know where you can find the updates in English? The same guy who posted it wrote in there like a link. He sent me a link, and I went to it, and it was like the website just with all the German information, and there's no option to change the language. And so I replied to it, and I was like, hey, I was like, oh, I'm looking for like the link specifically in English because I want to read it in English. I don't speak German. And he's like, he responded to it again saying, well, you live in Germany. Like, why would you expect them to put this information out in in English, because they're German, like they're going to write it in German. And I was like, I don't know. I was kind of expecting them to do it in English because Angela literally mentioned it in her speech that they are providing it in English. And yeah, that was a kind of smart ass way to say it, but yeah, he didn't take that well. And he wrote something like, oh, maybe he didn't respond to that, but he wrote me a personal message saying like, learn to speak German, you fuckwit. I was like, Jesus. Like, you literally posted this thing for people that don't speak German, and you admitted yourself that you don't speak German. And now you're having a go at me for asking for something in English that they said that they would provide in the speech you posted. And he's calling me a fuckwit for not learning German. So, but yeah, that was basically a result of him not reading what I was asking, which I said, like, does anyone have this in English? And he didn't give it to me in English. But, I wasn't going to give him a hard time for it or anything. I was just like, oh, can anyone give this to me in English? But, but yeah, this misunderstanding of my question turned into rage. Like, he was pissed off. And then he blocked me on Facebook because I went to screenshot it and just show one of my friends because I was laughing about it. And yeah, he blocked me and deleted the post he deleted his post from the page, which I thought was a bit crazy, but yeah. But there was another one I was asking on, I think it was the same page. I was saying like, oh, I'm trying to sort out my European passport and stuff, and it's going to be a long process. So I've got to apply for this. I've got to get my birth certificate sent from Australia and all this stuff. I was like, oh, yeah, I've got to do this and this and this. Does anyone have any tips, or has anyone done this before and got any tips on how to make the process a bit faster? And I got like 3 responses saying like, oh, you should definitely start the process. Like, you'll need to have a passport to keep living when your visa's done and all this stuff. I'm like, that's not the question. Like, obviously I'm going to start the process. It wasn't a question of like, should I do this or should I just give up and do nothing? It was like, how do I make the process faster? And everyone's like, yeah, you should definitely get the passport. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting the passport, obviously. But yeah, that's something that I think it's more funny than pisses me off, really. Like, I really had a giggle when that guy messaged me and called me a fuckwit. But whatever. So just about at an hour. So I might do some housekeeping and then wrap it up. Yeah, like I said at the start, like, I want to do this every week. And I guess I've kind of been tailoring to people who are new to podcasts in the sense that, like, I wanted to have a theme for each episode to be like, I'm actually presenting some information on a specific thing, then you should watch this video for that. But that's not really my intention with the podcast. It's just that I want to do a weekly podcast, and it's going to be about different things across each episode. So I want to move to the kind of format where you name the episode at the end. Like, you sort of just start recording and talk about whatever I've written notes about, and then whatever the significant thing was, then that becomes the name. So yeah, I guess I appreciate all the people who listen because they, are podcast listeners like me, and that go, oh yeah, it's cool listening to your thing while I'm working or while I'm exercising or whatever. That's the point. So if you like it for that reason, then cool. I'm glad you're still listening to it. If you got any suggestions for things that might make it a bit more interesting, feel free to let me know. But yeah, so this is the conspiracy episode, but next week I don't know what it's going to be. Like I'll just talk about whatever. But I just want to do a regular update and talk about my things. Like part of this is just that I want to get more used to talking to a camera and building my confidence for kind of showing off more creative stuff. So there's not always going to be like a specific topic, but if you got things that I should talk about, you can send them to me. I think I'm at I said in the beginning that I really don't care that much about like subscribers, and I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe and send shit to your friends and stuff, but I do like when people watch it, and I do like seeing that people are subscribing to it, because it makes me feel like somebody is actually interested in what I'm saying, or they find it entertaining, or it's nice to listen to some background stuff while you're doing something else. So that's cool. I am going to keep talking about subscribers and stuff because I like it. But I'm not going to be the kind of I'm not trying to build up a YouTube following or something, but it is cool that the community is growing. And I do have an idea that maybe I'll talk about one day, but if I am ever able to build an audience, like a consistent audience by doing this, I'd like to point that as a resource of having a lot of people viewing something. I'd like to point that in some helpful directions, not just for myself but for other people or for other causes, I guess. But yeah, if there's ever the opportunity to do that, then I already have kind of a plan for that. But so I do have some vested interest in kind of building an audience. So yeah, I think I got to 45 subscribers or something, which is still nothing for YouTube, but it's something for me, so I'm happy with that. One of my friends, Grant, commented on the plants in the background. He said, "What plant is that?" And I actually don't know the tall skinny one, because I don't know what the actual name is for it, because I think it's called a yucca in Australia, and I guess it's the same here. I don't know if yucca is I didn't know if that was an Australian name for it. Maybe it's not. But yeah, basically that's a yucca. And I named my plants too. That one's called Cindy. And this one at the back, it's a, what is it called? Heartleaf something starting with P. I should look it up. But yeah, that one also has a name. It's named Gordon. And I'm actually trying to breed Gordon at the moment, because I want to grow a few more of them. I took a cutting off it, so I'm gonna have Gordon 2 and Gordon 3. It's called a heartleaf philodendron, if you're interested in plants. A little tidbit there. They're cool because they just grow everywhere. So the idea is I want to make my room look like a jungle, but it's going to be pretty slow. So yeah, welcome to the cast, Cindy and Gordon, everyone. They appreciate your viewership. Shout outs this week. Again, I'm going to say shout out to everyone who's quarantining, all those quarantinos out there, the Tenton quarantinos. Quentin Tarantino, Tenton quarantino. Yeah, it's good. I'm still noticing a lot of my friends are just doing whatever they want, and it's kind of pissing me off. So stop doing that. Another shout out though this week. I want to do a shout out to, we have a new mastering engineer for the album from my band, the Tropicals, the band that I was playing in before moving. So I'm not in the band anymore, but I was part of the recording of this album, so I'm still pretty invested in it because I want the album to come out and everyone to see it. But yeah, we found a mastering engineer. So we had a guy that we recorded and mixed with, and I won't talk too much about it, but I've got some mixed opinions about that whole process. And, you know, if you listen to this already, you know that it's been a crazy, long, drawn-out process. And part of that is our own fault as a band, and part of it is, you know, stuff that's out of our control, in other people's hands. But it's been a very annoying process. But I'm doing a shout out to the mastering engineer, because he's kind of given me some hope in the idea that this album is actually going to come out. Like, he's kind of reinvigorated my excitement for it, because he's much more professional than some of the other people that we've been working with. He's very responsive to messages. Like, his communication is really good, which is something that's very important, and it's underrated. Like, you know, it's really reassuring if you've paid somebody to you know, to work with you on something, that they get back to you, and then they give you they make you feel comfortable, like letting you know that they're working on stuff and that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely appreciate this guy. He seems like he's doing a good job. I haven't heard anything he's done yet, but so far it's been good communicating with him. And we're looking at having it done by the end of this month. He's planning to be done by around like the 25th of May or something. We're trying to get some art together for like the album art, like the cover. So yeah, hopefully that gets done soon. We've got a friend who's going to do something for that. That was something that there's been a lot of decisions that I tried to, you know, have my input on that, and the other guys wanted to do something else. So it's fine. I'm like, whatever. I just want this fucking thing to come out. So, but yeah, they've asked another friend to do something, which should be good. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, I think the beginning of June, Bandcamp is going to do like another, like they waive their fees for purchasing albums and stuff. So I think we'll do some kind of a release on Bandcamp, where if you want to, you know, pay for the album, if you want to give us some money, some love in the monetary form, you can do that, and you'll be able to buy a digital copy of it. But also, I think we'll probably do like pre-orders for a vinyl. And I don't like, you know, my opinion on vinyls is kind of, I think it's kind of pointless that people have vinyls, but at the same time, I want to have a vinyl of this album, because it's, you know, it's obviously special to me. It's the only album I've ever created. So we just thought, you know, if there's any of our close friends who really want to have this just because they're friends with us and they want to have that as a record or something they can put on their wall or something, we are going to do a limited run of vinyls, but it'll be make to order. So it'll just be figure out how many people want them and get people to pay for it up front. So we just get all the money together, and then we create an order and get them made and then give them to everyone. So maybe it'll be only like 10 vinyls or 20 or something. But yeah, so just letting you know, if you're interested in that, you'll be able to buy it on Bandcamp, and then we'll also do like a pre-order for a vinyl as well. And yeah, so that's it. That's everything I have. I think I remember to talk about everything. Oh, no. One more thing I wanted to talk about. I made a compliment about how in Germany on Saturdays you can go to the post office and they deliver posts on Saturdays, and in Australia they don't do that, but in Germany they don't open supermarkets on Sundays. My compliment about them being open on Saturdays, I take it back. Fuck the German postal system. This is kind of an issue between two entities here. Now, if you've heard of H3H3, they're a YouTube channel. They do a podcast as well. I'm a fan of them. All right. Before I get into this, like, I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining about them, but and I'm so much of a fan of them that I wanted to get one of their shirts, like merch, because they have their own brand called Teddy Fresh. And I'd sort of talked about it for a while, and then my sister bought me a shirt for my birthday, and my birthday was at the end of March, and she bought it a few weeks before my birthday, like with the intention that it would arrive before my birthday, like at the beginning of March, and it didn't. And after a while she emailed them and was like, what the hell is going on? And they're like, oh, sorry, like it's still in California, like they hadn't shipped it. So, you know, I know this is not Ethan and Neela's fault from H3H3, but something in their pipeline of, you know, manufacturing or shipping or whatever. But yeah, that was kind of annoying. And I know obviously all this stuff is it's very hard to ship things internationally while there's a pandemic going on. So you have to be understanding of that. But yeah, they kind of messed up in the beginning because they just didn't send it, seemingly. And then, yeah, it didn't arrive by the end of March, and it didn't arrive by the end of April. And then my sister sent me a message on Friday. She's like, yeah, it says that it should be at your local post office. I was like, that's weird. Like, I didn't get a card in the mail saying that that they tried to deliver it and it went to the post office. And the other thing is that, like, there's always been somebody home, whether it's me or my housemate, like, there's always somebody here. So it would be very weird that we would miss the package. So I went to the post office and they were like, no, we don't have it. And I was like, that's weird that they said it's at the post office when it hasn't even arrived at our house yet. They haven't even tried at our house yet. And then the next day, I checked the mail and there was like there was the card there. So I went in today on Saturday being like, hell yeah, like Germany, you can get package on Saturdays and go to the post office. So I go there and it's like 5 minutes before they close. And I go with the package thing and they're like, oh yeah, here you go, bring out the package. And then she's like, €13.30. I'm like, what? And she's like, you know, she's saying in German. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what am I paying for? And she's like, oh, sorry, I don't speak any English. And I was like, okay, all right, well, I'll just pay for it then. I just wanted to get it. So I like pulled out my bank card and she's like, no, we don't take Visa. I'm like, okay, pulled out my other bank card. No, we don't take MasterCard. I'm like, okay. And she's like, we only take EZ. She said EZ card, which I think means EZ card, or cash. And I had like €10.50 cash or something. And I just go, oh, I don't have enough. And she's just like, okay, sorry. And just like took the package away and just put it away. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, you were just about to give me the package. What do I have to pay for? Like, literally, what am I paying for? Like, my sister bought this shirt. It's like a $40 shirt or something. So there can't be import tax on a $40 shirt. And if there is, it wouldn't be 35% of the price of the fucking shirt. And my sister paid, the shipping on it, like $20 or something. So the shipping's already been paid for. And it's like, what's left? And then somebody mentioned maybe it's customs or something. It was like, it's a fucking t-shirt. It's brand new in a sealed plastic bag. Like, why do I have to pay 35% of the cost of something that's already had its shipping paid when it arrives, just so I can pick it up? Like, what the fuck am I paying for? It's so stupid. And if you want me to pay for it, why do I have to have a fucking non-universal bank card that's only available in this one country? Like, Visa and MasterCard are the cards that are meant to be used in any country in the fucking world, but you can't use them here, and you got to use cash. It's like, yeah, very good to be encouraging everyone to be using cash when there's a fucking pandemic plaguing us. So yeah, I take it back, German postal system. You've wronged me again. And yeah, H3H3, I don't know if it's your fault. The shipping thing in the beginning though is a bit weird. But maybe as a suggestion, look into your international shipping, because for some reason there's some fee that people have to pay when they receive a package. So I don't know if there's something you can do about that, but yeah. Anyway, rant over. Podcast over. I'm gonna catch ya later.